My 44 male, wife 41 female, was recently contacted by her ex-boyfriend / co-writer 36 male, and I've grown a bit nervous. Hello, and welcome to everyone. First, I'd want to emphasize that my wife and I are pretty open, maybe even a little too open, about our former relationships, prior lovers, and other such matters. She goes by the name of my second wife. The adultery of my first wife caused us to split since she was adamant about being faithful. My ex-girlfriend and I had a child together. My wife also has a daughter from a previous marriage, which is a bonus. We've been married for 5 years, and our little mixed-race family gets along just well together. As I previously said, we may be being a little too candid about our former romantic associations. Her first husband had a history of adultery with other women. He was a musician who enjoyed having encounters with the females he encountered while performing. She gained access to his emails and learned that he was involved with 5 other women, one of whom he had gotten pregnant with. She confronted him about his relationships with these women. She sought advice from one of her old online friends, whom we'll refer to as Chris, since she didn't want their child to grow up in a dysfunctional environment. They had been writing partners for 7 years, but had never met in person. They had been friends for 7 years. In fact, they were collaborating on a book just before they lost contact with one another. She tells me that when she approached him for assistance, he was really kind and had been suggesting a variety of strategies to get past infidelity, such as what you should discuss with an attorney, in addition to generally being a nice friend. They came to the conclusion that they would alter their manuscript at some point along the line. She said that they would casually flirt with one another, but that since they lived on opposite sides of the nation, they couldn't take things further. In the middle of all of this, she came to the conclusion that her marriage was finished and ceased trying to fix things, I guess checked out completely. Both she and Chris had a strong attraction to one another, and Chris had gone out to meet her before the end of the year. She filed for divorce soon after the affair turned physical, and Chris moved in with her later in the year after she filed. Simply put, her child, who was just 5 years old at the time, did not care for him. To make a long story short, despite her insistence that he didn't do anything wrong, she was having difficulty dealing with the divorce and didn't want someone to take over as her father. My wife advised him that they would need to take a break as a result of this, as well as the fact that he can be a bit unpleasant at times. She had only intended for it to be a brief break, but he was allegedly so furious that he traveled all that far just to be rejected down the road 2 months in that he decided to cut it off permanently. It was only meant to be a temporary pause, she said. Several months later, they reunited in an effort to finish the manuscript they were working on. During this time, they began sleeping together again, but just for the sake of physical comfort at this point. They were nearly through with the book when she started seeing me, and as a result, they stopped sleeping with each other. Having an ex around after entering a committed relationship made her feel uncomfortable. As a result, she stated that she stopped replying to his emails on a regular basis, all of which were book-related, and that she stopped working on the book as much. After a few months of this, he grew annoyed and began to ban her from any communication. So let's go back a month and talk about it. He contacts her out of the blue after a period of 4 or 5 years in which they have not spoken. He got infected with COVID and came dangerously close to death as a consequence. Chris approached her because, according to Chris, during their time apart, he revised the book without her input, had it published, wrote and published a sequel, and released his work, which was on the verge of being unfinished if he died. Chris and his wife had been separated for a year when Chris approached her. Specifically, he wanted to make it clear that, in the event of his death, he wanted that she get the rights to this item since she is aware of how the tale would conclude and was involved in its development. Okay, that does seem wonderful at first, but then they start talking to each other. He's apparently working on a comic book adaptation, and he's enlisted her assistance in making it a reality. His work is almost completed, and she was overjoyed to be able to show me everything and tell me about all the characters, their backstories, and where she thinks he went wrong with the design. The first book was also read by her, and she is telling me which characters' names he changed, which characters appeared and did not appear in their version, and which narrative alterations there were. She looked to be having a good time with it. I was aware that they collaborated on writing since she had mentioned it earlier, but I was unaware that they had created a whole universe. I can see that that was a very important thing to her at the time. She seemed to be thinking about accepting his offer, which is concerning to me. They'd had every time they've collaborated on a project in the past, and they want to continue. There is also an element in their writing. Not only do I not want to tread on a dream she'd laid to rest, but I also do not want the same mistakes to be made again in the future. I'll admit that I eavesdropped on their communication, and while he appears to be on the level and is simply discussing the project, she's asking for specifics about his personal life. Though not flirtatiously, she inquired as to whether or not he was currently seeing anybody, and when he responded no, noting his busy schedule and the fact that relationships just get in the way, she advised him he needed to get back into the dating scene, that celibacy doesn't reflect good on him. As a result of our openness about our former lives, I know her ex-husband wasn't very skilled in the bedroom, and she once said of Chris while under the influence of alcohol, "Don't let a terrific convince you it'll be a great relationship. What should I do next?" But she did have an affair with this man, and I realized that she was emotionally wrecked by her ex-husband, which is why she strayed. I've met him, and he seems to be a kind guy, but they have a history together, and something awful may happen. I'd want to speak with my wife about my concerns, but I don't want to come off as rude or controlling in any way. In talking about this book, which I'd never heard of before, she shines in a way I've never seen before, and it makes me want her to have a creative outlet of her own. It seems to have been something extremely significant to her that she tried to make inconsequential by dismissing it as trivial. The truth is, I'd want it for her, but I don't want their encounters to continue to escalate, as they have done 3 times before. Story 2. Should I 25 female forgive my ex, 29 male, for what I consider cheating? To shorten a long story short, I was with him for 3 years total. It wasn't long until I was head over heels in love with him. We had been through a lot together, and I honestly felt I would marry him one day. After almost a year of dating, I discovered that he was using a major dating app and had conversations with at least 15 other women. I was devastated. He insists that he has never met any of the individuals named above. I'd forgiven him and moved on. I was regularly reprimanded by his family for having no prior experience with children. He had 2 under the age of 7. But I was doing my best for the most of our relationship. I was working 2 or 1 full-time job while also attending school full-time. When I realized that he had downloaded Hinge in April of 2021, I was shocked. He claims that he just downloaded the app and did not register with it. In addition, I saw him and a friend exchanging filthy images of women and porn stars back and forth with one another. Despite the fact that I broke my relationship with him 7 months ago and started a new life for myself, I have never stopped thinking about and missing him. I resigned because I felt I was being taken advantage of on a consistent basis. I'm presently living in a nicer neighborhood with a roommate and doing 2 jobs to supplement my income. He contacted me in November, attempting to express his regret and accept responsibility for all he'd done wrong. He said that he is in treatment and understands that he may never have the chance to reconcile with me again, and that he has never experienced love like mine. I'm torn between the 2 options. I love him, but the things he's done to me have wrecked my relationship with him. Being alone out here is having an effect on my ability to think clearly. Please be mindful to others. This is proving to be pretty challenging for me.